Since the formation of our nation, the right to vote has been the cornerstone of our representative democracy. Over many years, Congress has expanded voting rights to make sure everyone had an equal voice in our democracy. The 15th Amendment of the United States Constitution provides that no government in the United States may prevent a citizen from voting based upon that citizen's race, color, or previous condition of servitude. It was ratified in 1870. After an epic 72-year struggle, women finally won the right to vote. The 19th Amendment provides that neither any individual state or the federal government may deny a citizen the right to vote because of that citizen's sex. However, Jim Crow laws in the South continued to make it nearly impossible for African Americans to register to vote almost a century after passage of the 15th Amendment. Some would require literacy tests or answering arbitrary questions to gain the right to register to vote. The 24th Amendment of the United States Constitution prohibits both Congress and the states from conditioning the right to vote in federal elections on the payment of a poll tax or any other tax. The amendment was ratified in 1964. Poll taxes had been enacted to prevent poor people from voting and had been held to be unconstitutional by the United States Supreme Court. And finally, echoing the language of the 15th Amendment, the National Voting Rights Act of 1965 outlawed discriminatory voting practices that had been responsible for the widespread disenfranchisement of African Americans. We now have the Voting Rights Act. Now, all citizens should be treated equal and their votes should be treated equal. We've come a long way. Now let's talk about instant runoff voting and how it's a step back in time. Most of the information we'll be reviewing here comes from the Public Research Institute's report from San Francisco State University, where they studied ranked choice voting elections in San Francisco. What jumps out at you right away in this report is after San Francisco spent over $700,000 on voter education, is how many people did not know they would be selecting their representatives using this voting method. In 2004, only 67% of the voters showing up at the polls actually knew and were prepared to vote using ranked choice voting. That dropped to 54% in 2005, which means less voters were familiar with this new method the following year. What's even more disturbing, African Americans were considerably less likely than any other racial or ethnic group to know that they would be using this new voting method at the polls. Only 41.9% of African Americans knew that they would be using this entirely new method to vote. And finally, those with lower rates of prior knowledge tended to be those who were less educated, reported having lower incomes, and spoke a primary language other than Spanish. So let's see how they were prepared to vote. In 2004, 33% did not know they'd be using instant runoff voting or ranked choice voting. This increased to 45% in 2005, and 58% of African Americans didn't know they'd be using that method. And the less educated, lower income, and most of the second language voters did not know as well. So understanding how to vote. It's not as simple as 1, 2, 3. 48% didn't understand it perfectly well. Now remember, 33% didn't even know they'd be using it, so how well could they be prepared? And the various levels of understanding tracked with ethnicity, race, economic, and education and age. Let's take a look a little more closely at that. Did not understand entirely or did not understand well at all. Less than high school. 23.8% to 10%. African Americans, the blacks, 16.2%. And Chinese, 21.9%. Didn't understand it at all. The average across the city was 11.7%. Maybe that's why Suzanne Harel from the Chronicle wrote, confused Chinese-speaking voters resulted in them having less say in the election outcome, according to a voter education group. This group also considered filing a lawsuit. She stated, still, Lee's group is using its findings and considering whether to file a voting rights lawsuit against the city or push for a repeal of ranked choice voting. Here's a little more from the report, the lack of understanding. The wealthiest voters had a pretty easy time understanding it, but those in the lower income bracket, 23%, said they had a lack of understanding for ranked choice voting. And in levels of education, those with a more formal education had a pretty easy time with it, but those that lacked a high school diploma, 23% of them said that they had a lack of understanding of this new voting method. We can clearly show how the lack of understanding decreases participation in the voting process. After the voter education stopped after 2004, the percentage of voters who just voted for one nearly doubled in 2006. What that means is that the voters didn't have the opportunity to participate in the further runoff process. Maybe they just didn't understand how the system worked, but they didn't get that chance. Now let's take a look at another example. Minneapolis, Minnesota. They just ran a ranked choice voting election in November '09. We'll take a look at two neighborhoods, or wards as they call them. Ward 7 includes downtown and a fairly well-off neighborhood where the median household income is greater than $100,000. This comes from the census in 2000. And Ward 5, where the median household income is less than $24,000 and 2/3 of the residents identify them as non-white. Taking a look at the most recent output of the election, in Ward 7, we'll take a look at the spoiled ballot rate. The spoiled ballot rates are the ballots that are spoiled by the voters at the polls. These are mismarked ballots. And for Ward 7, you've got a mismarked ballot rate of 4.19%. We take a look at Ward 5, and we have a mismarked ballot rate of 6.9%. So we've got a comparison of two neighborhoods. One was Ward 5, which predominantly minority. They had a 6.96 spoiled ballot rate, and that's 65% higher than the city average of 4.23%. Taking a look at it graphically, the systematic disenfranchisement really does stand out. It should be noted that Ward 2 and Ward 6 are in disadvantaged areas as well. In Ward 6, the 2000 census shows that more than 1/3 of the residents live in poverty. As it was decades ago, some communities are taking action into their own hands. Pierce County, Washington just repealed ranked choice voting in November, and Aspen, Colorado residents voted to abandon instant runoff voting. After an official survey from Pierce County, Washington, of over 90,000 people, they found that 66% of the people did not like ranked choice voting, so they put it back up to a vote. The repeal of ranked choice voting won big, with a margin of over 40%. From the founding of our great nation to the sacrifices made to ensure that we are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And to achieve this, many have rallied over the decades to increase our voting rights, rights for women, rights for all races, education or wealth, voting rights for all. IRV is a step backwards in voting rights. Voting should be equal to all. We've shown that the data proves disenfranchisement with IRV based upon race, ethnicity, language, education, and income. The added complexity outweighs any advantage that instant runoff voting can give.